Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Noah Freeman.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Joe Kuzma, and over to my side here is one Mr. Noah Freeman. And Noah, this is going to be a regular occurrence now that the B team got to do their big long crazy insanity draft thing over there. I joke, Brian and Zach, but that's what it took. I'm like, hey, just leave me out of that. You guys are too crazy. But because of all that, welcome you back for this show here, and we've got some crazy stuff to talk about as well. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah, I am not one to wade into those very, very deep waters of everything related to draft stuff. It is a lot to keep up with, and I definitely enjoy listening to Brian and Zach and everyone else talking about it instead of me talking about it, because they are definitely well more versed in that realm of football than I am.
I admit I don't watch as much as I would like. Every year I try to see some more. I get into more of this as the combine goes through. I glean some of the other experts' opinions. Of course, I take heavily into account what our guys say because Zach is a guy with big boards and all kinds of other stuff. And, we had Derek here for a while too. And, Derek's out with a newborn and everything else, got his life going for him. So, but he had the same stuff. And we've had a few other guys like that, Chase, and a few other guys that are here that, they'll humble us when it comes to trying to, talk about all of these different prospects. You get somebody from Eastern North Carolina, something or other,
yes,
in Division II. I don't even know if that's whatever, no real colleges or whatever, wherever they did the show coach from, like
anything outside of anything outside of like the top 10 or top 30 picks basically is
yeah. And you know what, not to be funny, I'm an Ohio State guy, you're an Indiana guy, so we're more rooted in the Big Ten stuff to begin with, so we kind of know like our home base, and that's where a lot of people are with the conferences and stuff, and then some of the other big names. So even though I will be talking about, I still am not going to get on the running back topic yet today, and I know these guys kind of touched on it a little bit. It's just I'll be getting on that based on previous draft history. We do have some of that to talk about, though, with quarterbacks, but before we do any of that, I don't want to forget. I don't know if we mentioned it here on our program because I was in the middle of actually cutting this show. It was already in post-production when Marquise Pouncey announced his retirement 1 week ago. And I was just like, man, you got to be kidding me. You never have like any breaking news, which is the whole point of this show, is people just start pulling things from thin air now or try and read into between the lines. But, happy trails, I guess, as they would say on ESPN. What is that? Is that Pardon the Interruption? Happy trails?
Yeah, something like that.
Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. So anyway, happy trails to Marquise Pouncey. I think some people were already reading in or speculating this was going to happen. We knew it was. If it wasn't now, it's close. I mean, he's been talking about it. He seems like a guy who has a set plan for what he wanted to do with his life, and he's going out with his brother at the same time, and those guys kind of they're twins, you know what I mean? I guess they're kind of joined, so together there. But, a great career for Marquise Pouncey, potentially maybe some Hall of Fame talk. I don't know about first ballot, but, he's a guy that had enough All-Pro and Pro Bowl accolades. We saw how long it took Alan Faneca to get in there. No love for the linemen sometimes, but we'll see if the Steelers add yet another guy in the Hall next to Mike Webster and Dermontti Dawson.
For sure. I mean, I think the timing, like you said, isn't too surprising. The only part that might have been surprising to Steelers fans is just because he and Ben did talk about riding off in the sunset together. But if you think about it a little more after the initial shock came through, you probably didn't think 10 years ago when Pouncey was, like you said, he's a guy that probably has more of a plan than others. He probably wasn't thinking Ben was going to play closer to 40 than about 10 years ago. So Ben probably playing a little longer than he expected. Then, like you said, I think his brother and them wanting to go in and come out together at the same time was probably the most important to him. So both of them being ready to step off the field was probably the biggest impact of his football career decision. So, like you said, wish him nothing but the best in his post Steelers, post NFL career. It'll be sad to see him, and of course, all of the draft insanity mock stuff will have to come through finding more than just one lineman, but. It'll definitely be an interesting offseason for sure for those 5 guys up front.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll see how that works out. I mean, the Steelers, they went from Webster to Dermontti Dawson the same way they went from like Knoll to Cower. And I mean, Dawson was still a Knoll draft pick, but it was like almost a seamless transition there. It wasn't quite the same way from Dawson to Pouncey. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. They tried, was it Sean Mahan maybe? They tried out for a year from, they got him, I think, from Detroit. I'm drawing a little bit of a blank here. I think that's who it was, and there was like a lot of high expectations. So he was converting over from guard to center, and the project didn't work out. And then that's when they ended up having Jeff Hardings come in, who did a more than serviceable job for a few years, and then Marquise Pouncey was drafted there in 2010, and he leaves with 3 first-team All-Pros, 2 second-team All-Pros, 9 Pro Bowls. I get it. The Pro Bowl sometimes can be a popularity contest, but it's a recognition. It's an honor, and the only times he really missed it were he had a couple of bad seasons there. He got hurt in one preseason game against Green Bay many years ago, and they had to find a replacement for him, and you saw how that worked. Or didn't work, I should say. So I guess we'll see at some point if the Steelers look. I don't think they're going to be looking internally. I could be wrong, but I would think that B.J. Finney wasn't a guy before that they thought maybe to hold on to as a potential future replacement. I mean, they had to have this in the back of their mind the same way they're thinking with the future with Ben, which we're going to be talking about here in a second too. But with you're absolutely right. The Steelers are a type of team too that usually looks when they have a gaping need at a position. They usually don't have many, and even this year, I'm going to say they don't have many. Whole other topic for another day, but they will supplement that by finding someone who's a free agent and then drafting someone. One of those 2 options is usually going to be the one that raises your eyebrows versus the other. So the free agent may be somebody that's sought after, and then maybe it's like a guy they get in the 4th or 5th round, maybe. Yeah. Or the other way around, a first-round pick, sure. And then they just get a journeyman or something that might be, like a Stefan Wisniewski, for example. I know that didn't work out, but then again, you see it didn't really work out with the Chiefs either. He's kind of, going off the pasture there, and I think Pouncey maybe, especially this type of trying season with all the COVID stuff and everything like that, and the way it really ended for him, he probably took it very hard. He's a very prideful guy from what I take it. So, I get it. It's all of those things together. He probably had a plan, and he also he's not going to hold the team hostage and make this decision after the draft in June or something like that when monies are paid out and things of that nature. So he's doing it on he's a professional on the field and off is what I should say.
Yeah, and if the center, the actual center position is an internal hire, which I agree with you, I don't necessarily think it will be, that still is probably a hole somewhere else on the line that needs to come through. So there's definitely some offensive line work that has to go through. But yeah, I'm going to miss him. He was actually, so Ben Roethlisberger was my first jersey purchase, period, when I was a little kid. I actually share a birthday with him. I was born on his birthday. So he was like the only guy that I've ever known at the quarterback since I can remember. Obviously, there have been other quarterbacks since I was born, but he's really the only one. But then Pouncey was the first jersey that I purchased after Ben. It's the one that I've had for the longest after him. So
hey, that's you couldn't go wrong with that. That was a good one to wear, and it's something I say when hopefully we all end up able to go back to Heinz Field here in the future. You go to other stadiums, particularly within a division, the ones that have been closest, aside from Pittsburgh for me, I've gone up to Cleveland and down to Cincinnati a few times. The jerseys now, Cleveland are starting to get a little bit of guys there. Obviously, Cincinnati are going to wear Burrow, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. But for the longest time, it's like, okay, you had AJ Green in Cleveland; they didn't have anybody. Now at least they got Baker and Myles Garrett, and they got a couple of guys you could invest in a jersey, but for many years you'd see somebody wearing like Charlie Fry or Reuben Drones or Peyton Hillis or any number of guys that were either flash in the pan or were supposed to be Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson. That's going to be a hot topic of discussion when I get to drafting running backs. But it's one of those things. I was trying to find. I had this. Of course, I can never find it when I need it, man. There was like a cheat sheet with different free agents that were available right out the gate. And if I find this, and I probably won't because for whatever reason, nothing is ever working for me. Always against me. I was just trying to see what guys might be available on the market at the center position.
I was going to say, just while you're looking, I can cover you on the Ravens side. Yeah, the Ravens usually they're still wearing a lot of like Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, that kind of stuff, since I'm over in the DC Baltimore area and get to go to some of those games. Those are very interesting, going to away games at Baltimore if you ever get the chance.
I haven't, and I haven't felt like I have nothing against Baltimore. It was one of my favorite cities growing up. I'd been there a zillion times, but I haven't been back for over a decade now. Always loved the Inner Harbor down there. Always loved the Orioles ballpark, Camden Yards. Yep. It was one of the very first places that did like that kind of like retro industrial type with the brick and everything, and it had the buildings in the back. They were really kind of the trendsetter for that kind of ballpark experience. Love baseball parks, but and anybody that's listening that's obviously a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, you got probably the best park in all of baseball in PNC Park. So definitely, I'm not ragging on them. Anything else with that franchise, go right ahead.
Yes.
But, and that's way outside of my pay grade there. Here's some of the names, and I can't say that these guys will necessarily be available. In fact, Mike Pouncey's still listed on here, and he retired along with his brother Marquise. But some of the names that could be eligible for free agency here: Corey Linsley from Green Bay, David Andrews from New England, Austin Reiter from Kansas City, Alex Mack, who had been an excellent center alongside Pouncey in the AFC for many years when he played for the Browns. How old is Alex Mack right now? Football Center. Got to bring him up because they brought up some other kids thing. He's 35, so he's not a spring chicken anymore either. Pouncey, for reference, was 31, so he may have had more. Who knows if he had more tread left on the tires? He had, serious knee injuries, things like that. That might wear you down too. Tyler Shatley, Matt Skura from Baltimore, who I believe Matt Skura was the one who had some injury issues as well throughout the last year or two. Ted Karras from the Dolphins, Ben Garland, and then Ethan Posick from Seattle. And I don't even know if Ethan Posick did he ever get any kind of meaningful playing time. I remember he was like a pretty big name over the last when was he drafted? I'm trying to find that out here. Came over to the Seahawks in 2017, so I do remember that. LSU, he was a second-round pick, and I'm just trying to remember what kind of sometimes we have some statistics for starts. So, yeah, he's kind of been playing guard and center, kind of doing both. He's, so I don't know. Is that a guy that you maybe target? It depends. It could be a name that you look at that maybe it might not be paid as handsomely as some others and is position versatile, because I think the Steelers will be okay at guard. Like I said, I've speculated that David DeCastro have been playing hurt. We know Kevin Dotson's going to be a young stud coming up here. Whether or not they retain Matt Filer, I kind of doubt, unless they want him in a tackle kind of conversation. But I guess from what we've heard, recent conversations will be bringing up, Art Rooney's comments, Kevin Colbert's comments. It sounds like Zach Banner has been told that, he's going to get to come back and compete at left tackle, and we'll see how he comes back from his knee injury. And you put him with like Chuks Okorafor, two young guys that if they happen to pan out along with Dotson and DeCastro, you slide somebody in there that's capable at center, and it could be a first round draft pick. Maybe you get one of these guys that are coming out. I know there's I'm trying to think of all the names now. I'm not going to be put on the spot because I wasn't even thinking of going this route and talking about replacing the center. So let's table the rest of that. Actually, I just wanted to get the rest of those names there. I'm not going to go into the whole free agent list. But there's a couple of guys, and we saw what Brian and them did, and I'm just gonna say Brian and Zach. Okay, Morley Brian, he's the one that's crazy with the trades. I get that it's fake, and I get that it's not supposed to be realistic. It's definitely not realistic. I think that the Ravens trade a whole bunch of picks to their division rival, especially when they're just stockpiling them. But however, the Seahawks, they'll trade you anything. They're almost like Bill O'Brien. So it kind of balances out. Like they don't care about first round picks. So it's I don't know. It's one of those things. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. There's always a lot of speculation, and that's what the daily thing is here. Trying to pick up some. Oh, let's see. I had to do it for my own curiosity, man. I couldn't help myself. I'm not getting what I need to get here. I was thinking of like somebody like Creed Humphrey or Alex Leatherwood, but we'll see. I don't know that I want to get in all this. There's some guys. You pretty much get anybody from any of these bigger schools like, Ohio State, LSU, Alabama. You get somebody off of one of those rosters, and they're almost damn near pro ready. So, and beast. Yeah. Well, there's the one guy. How big was that guy? From Alabama, he's like 379 or something like that. 6'8", 6'9", 379. Like oh my God, he's enormous, and he can move pretty decently for a guy that size. I guarantee the NFL is going to put him on a diet and see if you can get more athleticism out of him, and he'll still be a hoss. That's the big thing people forget about is Alejandro Villanueva and Zach Banner were both kind of like they were big guys that had been, they trimmed down and fit into this mold. So Zach Banner could slide in there and be, at least as capable as Al was. But Al kind of had a late jump to the NFL game, and, Father Time caught up with him. So, okay, we're outside of Marquise Pouncey now, and I guess we could go maybe to quarterback, I guess, is the next thing. But before we get to Ben, there's people that are actually thinking the Steelers are cheap. They could have. Why didn't they do everything they could have done? A second-round pick and a third-round pick to go get Carson Wentz like the Colts did? Yeah. Do you not realize the type of contract that Carson Wentz has? Oh this guy, $100 million or whatever the Colts are taking on here. The Colts had the cap space. That's number one. The Colts have an immediate opening for quarterback with really nobody behind him because Jacoby Brissett's on the way out and scheduled to be a free agent as well. Phillip Rivers retiring. They have nothing there. And Frank Reich has that connection. Offensive coordinator for the Eagles when they win the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz was a large part of that before getting hurt. You always kind of wonder, though, would they have gotten it if Wentz wouldn't have got hurt and Nick Foles comes in? And who even knows where Nick Foles is going to play next year? So people want him in Pittsburgh. That's where they're going to want him. So and overpay him. But I'm kind of annoyed, and I kind of like that we saw something like this versus the Stafford and Jared Goff swap between the Lions and the Rams, because a lot of that we were trying to tell everybody, even though there's picks and players and things evolved, a lot of that had to deal with the salary that the other team is taking on, and that's the same case here. Now those picks can escalate and become first-round picks. There's clauses in there for it. I don't have the full trade details in front of me, but everybody kind of thinks, the Steelers could have just did this and had Carson Wentz. And I'm still not convinced that Carson Wentz is the Carson Wentz that, about a year or maybe a half-year span of being a really solid, excellent player. How much of that
gave him that contract?
Yeah, they got him that contract. Was it coaching? Was it, maybe he gets a revival under Frank Reich, or maybe blowing out his knee he just isn't going to be the same guy anymore. You just never know, and I don't think that's a risk that anybody really, if you are a true Steelers fan, and that's not the kind of risk you really want to take, especially considering they don't have the cap space. Yeah,
I've got ties to both sides of this trade itself, and I mean, first for the Steelers side of it, there was no way whatsoever at all, especially with, even if Ben Roethlisberger was cut, even the below average Steelers fan know that his contract isn't going to go away just the second you drop him. So it physically wasn't possible without literally, like you guys joked before, having like 40 out of the 52 members on the team or something like that, not even fielding a full roster. But I mean, in terms of the trade itself, it's definitely the quarterback free agents and trades and everything this offseason has and will be just tremendous and crazy. I've got a really good friend of mine is on the Eagles side that was jokingly, but he was like, I was shocked that we didn't have to give away picks because of how bad this contract was. And then you've got Colts players that are happy, but like, did we overpay too? Because maybe we could have gotten a little less. But I mean, I feel like this trade overall kind of depends on how well Carson Wentz does. If he ends up being that potential that got him that contract, like we just said, then it's definitely a win for the Colts. If he's just mediocre, and that contract is just a lot, because the Colts are going to have to do in a couple years because the Colts have the cap space right now because they've got such a good foundation in those rookie contracts right now. That's where they've got all this cap space. So in a couple of years, when that overlap starts to happen, if Carson Wentz isn't the contract that he's paying for, basically, is that going to be a win or not for the Colts? So we'll have to see kind of the win or loss for both or either side. We'll have to probably come later to see how well he actually does pan out in Indianapolis.
Oh yeah, I like the trade. I like the fit. I think it's good for both sides. I mean, Philadelphia. A lot of people will say, "Oh, Pittsburgh, they should have got Jalen Hurts." I mean, we still don't know, and they're switching over coaches, and this is a team that just won the Super Bowl just a few years removed, a lot sooner than the Steelers. And everybody wants to talk about, well, playoff wins, this and that. And it's like, come on. There's a lot of stuff with the organization as far as having stability, and that's far from a stable situation there. Lord knows where they're going to go. And I thought you were going to rattle off the stat that we were talking about, in the back rooms here, but I guess I'll pull it out here from Field Yates. He mentions, and I'm sure many others had too, with the trade of Carson Wentz, there will now not be a single quarterback drafted in the first round from 2009 to 2016 that's still with his original team. 0 out of 22. Do you still have the list up by any chance? I
do. So these are all of the first-round quarterbacks that are currently not with their original first-round quarterbacks that are not with their teams. You got Matt Stafford and Mark Sanchez to kick us off in 2009. Then you got Sam Bradford, Tim Tebow, 2010. We got a bunch in 2011. Looking back at the quarterback class in 2011 was really interesting. But first round, Cam Newton, Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, Christian Ponder. Those are some names for you that were drafted in the first round. 2012, Andrew Luck, RG3, Ryan Tannehill, Brandon Whedon. 2013, and it's crazy to think some of these quarterbacks were first round picks after.
Oh, I know.
2013, EJ Manuel. 2014, Blake Bortles. Johnny Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater, 2015, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, then 2016, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and Paxton Lynch.
Wow. There's a couple of names there that I know people were fawning over in Steelers Nation. It's just, I was telling you just earlier, offline, it's like we do the annual quarterback show, almost like two of them, one from a free agent standpoint and one from a draft standpoint, and everybody, it's like, go grab a quarterback first round, far from Jake Locker and Brandon Whedon, and there's a lot of bad ones. I mean, there's some that you obviously, I don't think anybody, you scratch your head. Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, I mean, these are kind of guys, and there's still a few guys that trickled into the second round too that didn't pan out. I'm sure there's several more. Sure. I mean, Derek Carr is still hanging around there, and I'm trying to think, like Geno Smith was one guy, and I'm trying to think who was kind of linked with him in that one draft too. But yeah, EJ Manuel was the only guy who went, and it might have been that draft actually, because EJ Manuel was the only first rounder in that draft. That was not a good quarterback draft, and even the
Geno
same year,
Smith, Mike Glennon were the only other second, third round. Then you start to get to the Landry Jones in the fourth round.
Well, yeah, maybe for that year in particular, and I know like. There's a few exceptions. Do you really love Dak Prescott if he comes with a $40 million price tag? If he's already your quarterback on your team, you're going to probably overpay to bring him in from somewhere else. Who knows how many of these positions are going to be actually open. There's even rumblings, I'm sure you've heard this too, out of Southern Florida as to whether or not the Dolphins may deal with Tua Tagovailoa. I mean,
That's just
well, you
man,
think about all
that's
the
just
talk
yeah.
leading to the draft was,
Yeah.
was he healthy? Is he ready to go? And maybe there's a little smoke around that fire. And there's even people talking about picking up Ryan Fitzpatrick and thinking he did a better job than he did. The guy's still he continues to get better as he gets older.
Yeah.
And he's never in good situations. He's been on bad Buffalo Bills teams, bad Jets team, bad Texans teams. Everywhere he goes is bad. And it's just, if he was on a halfway decent team, you got to wonder what he would do. That doesn't mean I'd advocate bringing him to Pittsburgh. I think the situation that they have right now is A-okay. I know a lot of people are begging for Ben Roethlisberger to retire. They're reading between the lines with Kevin Colbert. Look, the business season hasn't started yet. I think we're out to mid-March. I could find the actual, let's see, 2021 NFL season starting date. I don't know.
I'm
trying to figure out what
these,
this is. No, they give me September, which is not right. It's mid-March. It's mid-March. Sure. You know what I'm looking for. Yeah. It's when you could actually start talking to all of the free agents and whatnot, legally, the legal tamper period, and then contracts actually start to get signed and things of that nature. Of course, the NFL site itself, I'm looking at important dates right now, and they have nothing listed under it. It's like, thanks, NFL. Just leave me hanging here. I know it's coming up. It's like it's like this usually about the second or third week of March, and that's there's no reason to talk really. I mean, their teams are talking right now. I'm sure there's some talk. Ben has an agent. But right now, you know what I mean? I don't know that they're in a super immediate rush. I know they got to do something before the start of the league year. I think there's some roster bonus stuff and things like that aren't going to be able to be touched. But Ben played ball with this last year. It's how they were able to bring in some of the guys, franchise tag Bud Dupree. I remember that was a big concern. And then they were able to sign Eric Ebron and, DJ Watt and Derek DJ. Yeah. I always tease. It's going to be DJ Watt from now on. I don't care. But Ben's been a part of this, and I think a lot of people they throw around the word restructure, and they keep having to emphasize you can't restructure a one-year contract. There's nothing to restructure to. So it's probably going to be some type of extension where there's, they're going to be paying him for years that he's no longer playing.
Yeah,
spread the money out.
I mean, for in the other sense, when we're thinking of post Ben Roethlisberger, whenever that happens, if it's this year, next year, 5 years from now, whenever that happens, I guess it is for some Steelers fans. It's a out of all of these 7 draft classes, you don't have to draft a quarterback in the first round at definitely the top 5 to have a good quarterback. I mean, obviously the last couple of years have definitely changed that, but hey, to find Ben Roethlisberger's eventual replacement, it doesn't necessarily have to come in the top 5, so the Steelers don't have to have a 2-win season necessarily to find his replacement.
Yeah, I still am almost kind of teetering that you have to be almost a first rounder. And the only reason is that I think that's your best shot at throwing the dart and hitting the bullseye, but it doesn't mean you're going to hit the bullseye. There's plenty of guys in that first round, because once you get out of the first round and everything else, like I said, Russell Wilson is kind of an exception. Dak Prescott, those are 2 off the top of my head. I mean, you look at Derek Carr, he was okay. He was a second round guy. There's not a whole lot of other guys. I know Tom Brady. Yeah, okay. That's been the largest exception to the rule of all time. You had a guy like Tony Romo that went completely undrafted, but those type of things don't usually happen.
You could even say the Steelers already used their late round draft pick success with Antonio Brown. They already used their 6th round draft pick for higher than what it was.
I even say that they, you talk about Tony Romo, for example. I mean, that's Duck Hodges. It's the same type of situation, kind of, and you see how that kind of worked out. And I know a lot of people rag on Mason Rudolph, and Mason Rudolph had a lot of bad luck. He got knocked out cold, concussed in a game. And then came back, probably played a little jittery, and then got into the altercation with Myles Garrett. He didn't have Juju, or he lost the guys during the game. It was a short week, Thursday night game, after just coming back from that injury shortly after that. The offense kind of sputtered, and he threw 4 picks, and then he got benched midway through the Bengals game right after that, and that's how he got benched. It wasn't due to injury. He didn't really lose his job. He came back a couple of games later after Duck Hodges had a similarly bad game, throwing 3 or 4 picks against the Bills that most effectively, if they beat Buffalo there, they probably would have made the postseason. But I think they were running low on steam. They were going 3 and 4 deep at the bench at certain positions, like I was saying. Connor, Juju out a lot during that previous season, and also even Deontay Johnson for that matter. Even James Washington. There were guys that were not 16-game guys. That was like just a really bad year for the Steelers. Bad luck, especially on the when it comes to injuries in the offensive side of the ball. And you see what happened with the offensive line last year, but I also kind of think a whole lot of this had to do maybe with it is a Randy Fichtner thing. And he comes in and, they did okay that first year, but the last two, it's just, I don't know. Maybe there's just a lack of creativity. I don't know I don't know if we're going to pinpoint the problem and solve it, but they're trying. We got Matt Canada there now. You've got a new quarterbacks coach, a new tight ends coach, a new offensive line coach. I mean, it's almost all new position coaches across the board on the offensive side of the ball. So they're going to retool some stuff, and I think this is part of the thing they have to sit down and talk to Ben about. But the one thing that continues to get thrown around, obviously makes a lot of money, right? Obviously the Steelers don't have cap room, and it's like, they point the finger right at Ben. Well, they got a little bit of relief here. Vance McDonald and Marquise Pouncey both retiring, take some money off of the books there, and that certainly helps. We're hearing that the cap's going to be higher than a lot of the previous. Now the new number is 180 versus even 173, 175. That goes a long way. Mm-hmm. It goes a long way, and we'll see, if there's other moves that are made, and most certainly I think they extend how do you get rid of a Hall of Fame quarterback? I get that he threw some interceptions and maybe it wasn't his best game, but it's not like all year long he was just absolutely miserable. Everybody thought he was going to have the noodle arm. He was going to be Peyton Manning the final year with the Broncos, the worst statistical quarterback to ever start in a Super Bowl. I didn't see all of those things. I'm not in denial. I don't have blinders on. I don't think he's like old man Withers or anything like that, where he's walking around with a cane and can't do anything. I thought Ben still had a lot of stuff. I just think there was a complete lack of being able to either run the ball or an emphasis on doing so, and that has to do with some of the coaching there. A lot of the short pass stuff, it was the same trap that they fell into with Mason Rudolph. I don't know what happened week 17, but Mason starts just dishing the ball all over the field. He threw for the most yards since anybody other than Ben as a starting quarterback. So, I mean, that's an eye-opener in and of itself. He went for over 300, and if it's just him and the rest of the cast there, maybe they should have bounced Cleveland out of the playoffs. I'll continue saying that. So I know it's one game. We've seen guys like Matt Flynn get huge contracts, coming off of a big game, coming in for Aaron Rodgers up in Green Bay, and then that's when they got Russell Wilson too, and then Russell Wilson beat him in camp, and Flynn never really amounted to anything, unfortunately, except he got paid, which is good for him. But Ben's pay here, it's not $41 million. And I understand it's on the books and it looks like that, and there's dead cap. That money's already paid. They don't save that money if Ben goes away. It's $19 million. You look at all the other quarterbacks in the NFL that are making more than $19 million. He's like in the middle of the pack now at 19. If for 1 year, who else are you going to get at $19 million? You're going to end up just running with Mason Rudolph or another first-round pick here who's no longer with his original team, Dwayne Haskins. And I think veteran minimum there to see if he's going to behave and get his act back together, and maybe there's a maturity thing. Maybe there was just a bad fit, and we're going to see maybe if he has the natural skills. You never know. He could ascend and be somebody that they lean on too. So I think they got some money in the bank with all of these quarterbacks. I don't think it's so clear cut that Ben has to retire. They have to release Ben. This is bad. They're not talking to him. I don't think that's any of what's going on here. I just think this is like, you get to talk. You don't hear the general manager talk too often directly from the horse's mouth. You're reading between the lines and trying to pull some things out of here of things that they're planning. It's just part of the process, and we can't. We're all impatient. We're in a world of instant. It gets tweeted right away, right? It's not the way it works with everything else. So we just got to bide our time and see what ends up happening here. But it will happen soon.
Sure. You originally talked about you can't really get rid of, and that's even a harsh term, a Hall of Fame quarterback. I mean, think of all of what Ben Roethlisberger financially has done for the Steelers over his tenure with the team. He has not been a high-paid quarterback his entire career, basically. This was finally the time, and originally when his contract came out, we all knew that a large contract obviously is going to have to come from somewhere else. So some other player is going to have to give up that money since there is a cap. And he really hasn't had a large contract compared to the rest of the league. You guys, before his previous extension and contract that he's currently in, we even talked about how he was like, what? I even think when he was in part of his prime, he was like in what, the 13th to 15th highest paid quarterback or something, when he was easily top 7, possibly even top 5 at the time he was playing. So like his financial stuff has been extremely different for what he ends up deserving. So it is hard to just push him out the door because of that, because he has been so good to the program financially. And you also do want him to get compensated for what he has done for the team. He's given stability at the quarterback position for an extremely long time, longer than most programs see, sometimes ever in their entire franchise for one specific quarterback. So like you said, it's kind of hard to go back and forth. I did want to, real quick, I was looking farther into the 2009 to 2016, and I was looking even farther back, and there's only 3 quarterbacks before that still with, I think I'm doing this right, before 2009 that are still with their teams. Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, and Ben Roethlisberger now.
Yeah, because Brady and Brady wasn't a first rounder, so
he wasn't even first round. Yep.
Yeah, he's still not with his original team. I think you are doing it right. Maybe Alex Smith is the only other guy that's still hanging around now that Phillip Rivers retired. I do believe you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, Matt Ryan's an interesting one too. There's always people in Atlanta that are talking about, what's this guy ever done? I like Matt Stafford a lot better than Matt Ryan. I'll put it there. And you know, Matt Ryan's not a young guy anymore either.
No, and Joe Flacco's the only other first round that's still somewhere
Flacco's
around.
the other guy that I was just starting to think about too. I mean, Matt Ryan is 35 now as well, so he's starting to, you know, get up there in age, and that's not somebody I'd make a major push for myself. I'm not sure that he would even be available. I know there were teams asking about Russell Wilson, and they were told no, like, you know, whatever came out.
He's got a contract too now.
Oh yeah, he got paid, and that's the thing. I was going to say, the reason Ben has never really been the highest paid, he ends up taking, the Steelers always like to do it usually when the guy has their quarterbacks have 2 years left. I think they broke this rule on the last extension, actually, and they did it in the final year, and I think it still had to do with they've been playing tight to the cap, and it's because of all of these great players that they have drafted and retained. That's why they don't go out and blow a ton of money in free agency. They're not the Jets, who make boneheaded decisions with their draft picks, don't have guys that they keep, and then have to overpay for guys that don't end up working out for their team anyway. And that's why they continue to wallow in mediocrity, among a few other franchises. And there's some that are starting to turn around, and Cleveland, you know, there's a team right there, and much of the same reason they had the cap space, and they could go and blow a ton of money on like bringing Austin Hooper in, who I didn't think made that huge of an impact compared to what they already had. It looked like David Njoku got his head out of his rear end this year and was playing a lot better. He's another guy. He's much like Eric Ebron, where if you throw him a hard pass that he shouldn't catch, he ends up coming down with it, and then if you give him a soft pass, like, you know, you're playing in the backyard with the kid, you know, right out Butterfingers. Can never figure that out. But and then they had the other, was it Bryant Harrison? Bryant, I think that was the guy they drafted too, and you know, they got their own riches at that. Well, now Njoku, I think, is heading on out. I don't think they did like the 5th-year option. I think I think he's beyond the 4 years. I have to go back and look, but I recall that was somebody that the Steelers had quite a bit of interest in, and there was a lot of talk as to whether or not they would target him, or he was actually looking for a trade last offseason. He was kind of upset about the Hooper thing, but the whole thing there is that, you know, you have Baker Mayfield still on rookie contracts, Denzel Ward. They just finally paid Myles Garrett. So when you see other teams doing this stuff, same thing with the Ravens. I mean, they get some free agents. They have Lamar Jackson. This is going to catch up to them, because these quarterback contracts are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the next guy to sign one's going to want one bigger than the last guy who signed one, and that's where Ben is at right now. And he finally got, you know, a bit of a payday, and then you restructure it. Okay, we need some help. We want to be able to bring back Bud Dupree. They do it, and now you thank the guy by saying, okay, no, we need to get rid of you now, and it's like, we'll just eat this money. You know, I don't think so. There's a lot of talk about how Troy Polamalu was pushed out the door. I think Troy was more also a health issue. I don't think that Ben Roethlisberger in his current state, is he still the same Ben Roethlisberger from 10 years ago? No. Maybe even 5 years ago? No, I don't think so. But is he still better than most of what's out there? Absolutely, I think so. So
I think the question really is he capable of, with the correct surrounding parts, is he capable of bringing a team to a Super Bowl and winning it? And I think the answer is yes, just because of how good the surrounding parts are on both much of the offense and then the entire defense.
Well, it's much the same way that he won the first time. Bill Cowher's only Super Bowl win. You go back and look statistically. I mean, Ben wasn't exactly the sharpest quarterback. I mean, he made some gutsy moves and he extended plays, but that was defense, and that defense is like once in a lifetime period of time there. That short window that they had, just lights out. They were great, and I think they have that the same thing. And they had it this year, and then you lose Bud Dupree and Devin Bush, unfortunately. And I was looking at the top paid players, too, for the Steelers here. So Marquise Pouncey was the 5th highest paid, and I think he's coming off the books with a cap savings of $8 million. And Vance McDonald was down here with 5.2, so they get you at about 13. I think they were originally in the hole about 9. I think it was around 19, or maybe it was 21, but I know it was around the exact figure they would save with Ben. And if he does some type of restructuring, or not restructuring, I used the wrong word, but if they extend them and they float this money, and do some funny bookkeeping here, and then the cap goes up higher than what they thought, I think the Steelers will be okay, because the following year they're going to find themselves with all kinds of cap space. Now, I understand there's some guys they're going to have to start working on stuff with, like T.J. Watt or Terrell Edmonds, but I mean, this opens the door potentially to, could they pay Bud Dupree, and technically on the books he's making, I don't know, $1.7 million or something for 2020, and then his hit is like, $22 million next year or something like that. It's feasible. I do think that Alex Highsmith might be capable to come in, and they kind of had their plans just in case Bud isn't a possibility, among other players. There's a ton of free agents, and that's a whole other topic, but I do think that they'll figure something out with Ben Roethlisberger, and I don't think it's a bad thing. And I mean, then they'll have to figure out what they do the following year, because it's Haskins on a 1 year, with Rudolph entering the final year of his rookie deal. So they may move on and draft somebody after that. They may surprise us but I think there's much higher needs. And I think their quarterback room is ship-shape as it is right now, that they don't have to go, diving head first in for any quarterback that's available in the draft. So these crazy quarterback trades, there's nothing to say that if Ben comes off the books, and there's an opening there, that somebody else doesn't float around like that. You know what I mean? Like a staff, or even Goff or Wentz. You know what I mean? One of these guys that were just taken within the last few drafts, it's always a possibility.
I mean, you even just talked about Haskins and potentially Roethlisberger next year. It's gonna if we think the quarterback conversation is interesting this year, Mason Rudolph also comes off the books after next year, so they have to figure out what he's gonna mean to the franchise,
to the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not gonna get $19 million even. Yeah.
No. But like, if they're gonna keep him, if they're gonna try and see if he could be the starter, if they want to keep him as a backup, if he's gonna get more money elsewhere, it's gonna be a very big conversation coming up next year too.
Yeah, and I don't think, as much as, there's a lot of people, they probably were already talking, as I said, like Terrell Edmonds. That's for another day, too. But some people, if you're not watching close enough, I think he tremendously improved. Brian says the same thing. Pro Football Focus has backed me up on this. It's not even where I got it from. It was just kind of my eyeball test. So we'll see with that. And, I don't think his position or his pedigree is one of, extremely high pay either, versus like, I think the cornerstones of defense going forward for sure are T.J. Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Devin Bush. Those guys are going to be the high dollar guys, and you got some other guys moving around there. Cam Hayward may not play forever. He's in his 30s now, and Vince Williams has been around for a minute too. So these are the things that the Steelers structure. Their plans, they have a roadmap, and I think it goes many years beyond what we think. And of course, that changes. It's flexible. The Post-it notes move around on the board, or the magnets, or whatever you got there. So. It's like I don't get worried with the direction of where this franchise is heading as much as some people do. They'll tell me we love mediocrity, we love not winning, but I think they won 11 straight games, and stuff happens. It's any given Sunday. So I mean, I'm not going to fault that. I still would rather take that any day than being where some of these other Buffalo Bills waiting forever to get their day in the spotlight.
I think a lot of the defense too are the I don't know, integrity is not a great word, but the off the field part of a lot of the defensive players, I think a lot of them will be willing to play ball with the Steelers too. Just like, for example, if they talk to TJ and say, hey, we need this year for you to have not a lot of money given to you, and then it's going to be backlogged to you because we need to get this part of Ben's contract or all of the moving parts together. I feel like a lot of them are going to say, yeah, let's go for it. I'm willing to take a quote unquote pay cut this year to be able to backlog to keep this person for a longer time and get the salary cap up, whatever it is. I feel like a lot of the guys will be willing to play ball with the Steelers just to the high dollar guys, like you said, will be able to kind of figure out a situation that works for everyone.
Yeah, it's one of those things with the roster bonuses and stuff where Le'Veon Bell wanted like the entirety of his contract to practically guaranteed, and they weren't going to do that, and he wanted all this money up front, and they weren't capable of doing it either. But they still made – I thought they made a very healthy offer to him, and who knows how that would have turned out. Would he still be in regression where he is? There's some that
that's another podcast for another time too. He's running back contracts.
It really is, and we will be talking a lot about running backs. I guess the last thing that we haven't covered here, we've mentioned – well, I mentioned the same thing with TJ Watt too, fifth-year option. So he's still got it's under contract through this year. They may not do that talk until next year. That talk will
Probably
happen. He's not going anywhere. He's not walking out that door. I almost want to say they may have that same kind of approach still with Bud Dupree, but it all depends on, what's Daddy got in the bank. You know what I mean? I talk about rooting around in the couch for pocket change, and that's what they got to do here.
Yeah, but Alex Highsmith made that conversation a real conversation this past year.
Yeah, he certainly did. It eases you when you actually see the player on the field. Is he Bud Dupree yet? No, but then again, Bud Dupree wasn't Bud Dupree. A lot of people are going to say, well, it's because of TJ. Well, no kidding. You know what I mean? TJ, I think, is only TJ too with Bud Dupree. Also, you got a lot of moving parts. You know what I mean? That's why it's a team. It's not always there's individual accolades, but the whole team helps for that individual success. Especially when you're talking about wide receivers and running backs and guys that are the stats hogs. That's why you need the guys to do the dirty work up front with your offensive line or even your defensive line. So where does J.J. Watt fit into all of this?
It doesn't go away, Joe. It doesn't go away.
Since I've last spoke about this, I thought it was more preposterous because he was still under contract with the Houston Texans. Now that he's released,
changes everything.
I'm coming off of that a lot, and there is a possibility. And I do think the possibilities are going back to, in his home area, I'll say, home state of Wisconsin, Green Bay Packers. They're a contender. How old's JJ now? 33? Hold on, I'm going to find out. 31. Oh, geez, I'm aging him too far. But he's roughly in the same age category as Cam Hayward. He's a 4-3 defensive end coming to a team with a 3, not even a traditional 3-4, hardly. A lot of times you're not playing a nose tackle out there anymore. So that's why Javon Hargrave was expendable the previous offseason. A lot of people still want to bring back Casey Hampton and, bring everything back about 10, 15 years to a defense that, doesn't really exist against today's NFL offenses. No. It's sometimes a rotation. You take a look at Tyson Alualu, who will be a free agent, but primarily he's the one that's a nose tackle, but he'll come in and he'll spell Tuitt or Hayward, who are both excellent players. You're not getting rid of Tuitt. Tuitt is young. I think he's 27, 28 years old. Cam is right there at like 31 as well. Tuitt had his first double sack season this year. Cam Hayward had been one of these guys that have been up there in team leaders with sacks over the years. How do you disrupt that? You're going to bring a guy. Everybody assumes that J.J. Watt is just going to take a pay cut. I hate saying anything would take a pay cut. If it's me, I want paid for my value of what I'm worth. There's other incentives here. Obviously, being able to play with his brothers, Mike Tomlin as a head coach. Say what you will, folks. He's a guy that's desirable to go and play for. Ben Roethlisberger's back. You got a franchise quarterback. You're looking at this as, well, this team won 11 games last year. You know, some other things didn't go this way. How can I contribute? How can he contribute? Does he slim down and play standing up as an outside linebacker? Or someone even pitched this. It's like you find a way for a player of his caliber to fit in. Will he be – he's had some injury problems. Not this past season so much. He just played on a bad team. So I think he's beyond that maybe. He is a little older. Maybe there is some risk. Maybe that's where the dollar values kind of fit in. But he's still a guy, I think, that's in the upper third or so of your salary, regardless. Now, I said they got some money maybe that's going to be available in the coming year or two. So do you look at something like a 2-3 year deal and try and find a way to make him fit? And how does he fit? Someone pitched this online. I can't take credit for it, but the way the Baltimore Ravens run their defensive front, and they've always had kind of that one edge guy like a Terrell Suggs or a Matt Judon. You might be able to do some type of hybrid there where that guy is TJ Watt. You say sayonara there, maybe to Bud Dupree. You're spelling Watt with Highsmith, and then you have a front there that's J.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, and or Tyson Alualu as you shift and sub those guys up front. I'll tell you, when somebody was starting to pitch that idea, and I wish I could give the person the proper credit, it kind of was a little bit of an eye-opener. Would the Steelers be willing to do something like that? Or do they have other priorities? I mean, we talked about a whole lot of – we haven't gotten into the free agents list, but, you know, Mike Hilton and guys like that too. Juju, Connor, I don't know who might all come back. Is this another guy that you maybe sacrifice for? You know he's a former defensive player of the year. You know he's a stud. When you got TJ, you were hoping you were getting what JJ was at that time. And if JJ could still be that same type of player and you put them both on the field, it does, man. It gets you kind of excited. And it's almost kind of like, you know, a fantasy versus reality type thing. But I still think I still think it could be plausible. But, man, I think it's tough to find out the right fit, not only for a position and what his role would be, but also the salary.
I think you and I were the last time we actually were able to talk about this before he was officially waived, because he technically, I mean, he was cut, but like that was just a mutual agreement to part ways, which that changed the tone of this whole conversation, like you said, because the Steelers wouldn't have to trade for him, so they wouldn't have to give any additional assets of any kind, and the contract could potentially be better than what it would have been before he would have been waived and or cut. So that's where the enticement starts to become a conversation, like you said. And then you made, I agree with all of what you said. It's just going to depend on someone is going to have to, whether it's JJ, Cam, Stephon, Bud maybe not coming back to the team or coming back or whatever it is, someone or a bunch of, and probably more of everyone will have to change something, take a step back in how much they're contributing on the field to make it work. And if that's something that they're probably, I would assume the Steelers would probably come to that defensive front and say, hey, is this something that we would be interested in, because this and this and this would have to happen. Like you said, they would have to change the way they play slightly. Someone or a bunch of people would have to change the way they go about doing the defense. But it would be really interesting. And I mean, is it worth, like you said, everything going for it? Because you're an NFL team to where you don't necessarily need more press, because it would be really cool to say, all right, you got all of the Watt brothers on the same team. You've got, even if you were able to make JJ and TJ both on both ends and stuff like that, it'd be really cool to say, but is that really worth the media? You don't really need that attention. It's not like college where you could bring in recruits or something like that. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it's a conversation that we can continue to have now, because it is plausible, and it would be, if they ended up finding a way to make it work, contract and the style of play on the defense, it would be really cool to have him back. But like you said, it's probably still more on the no side. Just the percentages are starting to shift.
I'm sure those conversations are all happening.
Yeah,
and they may be happening over priority of that conversation with Ben that still needs to happen. I'm sure
probably
there's probably a lot of suitors. That phone's ringing enough, and there's some decisions that have to be made, and I'm sure JJ has a few of the teams at the top of his list, like I said, and a 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year. The reason I said slim down, I see anywhere from 6'5", about 290, right? about 20, 25 pounds on his younger brother. And I wonder if, let's face it, these guys, they don't drop as much as they used to in the pass coverage, but they're still used that way. And it's not unlike the Steelers to pluck someone that had been a 4-3 defensive end, edge rusher type. Usually they pull him from college and get him working in. Lamar Woodley's one for sure that really pops into my brain. But there's others. It's not as frequent because a lot of the past names, Bud Dupree or somebody like that, or TJ Watt, these guys, they bring them right in. These are guys that are drafted. So there hasn't been like a real free agent outside linebacker type for the Steelers for quite some time that I could think of off the top of my head. But maybe this is something you could think about. I wonder about that. Can you drop him into pass coverage? Would it be a weak link? Is he fast? Is he slow? Like, how does he fit into if you're doing that traditional role? And it's still not traditional. It's barely even like a regular nickel defense anymore. It's very heavy on defensive backs versus the guys up front, which is when I look and you see like out of the top 5 paid players, holy cow, what do you got? Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward are 3 and 4 on this team as far as what their cap numbers are. So it makes it a lot more, and especially since they're productive players still too, it makes it a lot more difficult to figure out how that might fit. But at the same time, and I understand Bud has been on a tear, sack wise, strip sacks. He turns the ball over. He's younger. Do you invest more money in a Bud Dupree for more years, or do you get that short injection in the arm and hope that, paying J.J. Watt and changing maybe some of your schemes and stuff pays off, and that he's healthy and he can be a 16-game player? Those are all the questions that need to be asked. Way above my pay grade.
For sure.
I would, if the Steelers did it, I trust the Steelers in what they do. If they don't do it, I also trust in what they do, and that's the best I could say. But for some of the people to, slam the gavel and say one way or the other, I'm not there, man. I'm right down the middle on it. So it would be cool. I guess I would. I don't know. Would I have to buy new jerseys that say TJ Watt on the back now? Like I didn't because DJ.
Yeah.
DJ. He just had Watt on the back of his too, and then some people were confused by that. Obviously, they just, who's this guy? He's like shrink, like you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the Peter Dinklage version of TJ Watt. So it's like, but anyway, I guess that's where I'm at with the whole JJ Watt thing. I mean, we sound like we're almost all in agreement, here in the back rooms and everything else like that. Great player, probably would be a great addition and a leader, and definitely welcome to Pittsburgh with open arms. I would put him right in there with like D'Angelo Williams as a guy that comes over, very well known from another franchise that would fit in just like the round peg with the round hole.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's not like D'Angelo Williams, backside of his career, willing to accept a backup role and not make that much money. I don't think it's the same scenario, and nor do the Steelers have the money to spend at this time.
Yeah, I like you said, if I'm probably split down the middle. Like if the Steelers end up making it work, I trust them, and I trust that it will end up working, and Keith Butler will find a way to make everything pan out on the field, because obviously that's the most important part, what happens on the field. If they don't, I trust that they just weren't able to make it work with everyone. The only, if you're in the boat that you would really, really like to see him in the black and gold, I guess that quote unquote hometown discount, whether it's in the form of a contract or sacrificing play on the field, it would now go to the Steelers now that his hometown is no longer down in Texas, since he would have it seemed, and if you can just tell from the Twitter banter between TJ and JJ that all the brothers are extremely close to each other. So I really do think JJ would like to come be close to both of his brothers, and it would also be closer to his home up in Wisconsin as well, that he could have an easier way to get back and forth between Pittsburgh and Wisconsin. So we'll have to see. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if moves were maybe off the books, because obviously some moves can't be made until a certain amount of times. But if things weren't already in the works and we didn't hear off the book talk about this happening or not happening, basically coming up shortly.
Yeah, and I was trying to see here. I was trying to see what, if anything, he may have had left over from the Texans, but I don't know that there is. So table that for another time. I've done enough of the research and staring at my screen today, drawing blanks. It's just not the least prepared people doing this out here, but I at least try and make everyone informed and look up the proper information. And I don't know, the hometown discount thing always kind of gets me. Again, it's you have such a certain window. The only thing that makes this maybe a little bit differently versus, let's say, Bud Dupree, somebody saying, "Oh, well, you know what, Bud will take less just to stay with the Steelers."
Oh man,
he's got a lot ahead of him. He could sign this contract, not be good anymore, and he goes home with a healthy bank account. And it's got to be bothering him too, or at least in his decision making, back of his mind, that he was under a franchise tag. Yeah, it was all guaranteed, but there would have been more money, contract security, this and that. What if he's shot and can't play again, whatever, tore up with his knee? Which I don't think, obviously don't take that as being the case, especially with today's sports science. You know what I mean? They bring anybody back. They brought Ben back. It's like Lazarus. So it's like, but Bud is different. JJ's made, $100 million or whatever in this league. So JJ might be more amicable to doing this for other personal reasons, winning a ring, playing with his brothers. Those things may factor into it. Primanti brothers changing their name. They said they would change their name to Watt Brothers if nobody heard that already. But all kidding aside, there's still, I don't know what his family situation is too. Is he still like up in Wisconsin? Does he have his family there that do you do a short interim move to Pittsburgh and then go back up to Wisconsin, or do you pull that trigger now and that's where you plan on living, out your days is back, where you grew up or whatever. So, the family stuff always factors into this. It's another thing. Which
the Packers have been in the conversation as well, which would actually be his original hometown, close enough anyway for being close to where his family, and it seems like they all like to go back to Wisconsin anyway. So that's another factor into it as well.
I was Pewaukee. Is that what it is? It's a little further south there, it looks like, than wherever Green Bay is. I'm trying to look at the map here of Wisconsin. If we have any Wisconsin Steelers fans here, I've been up in the
Sorry.
Yeah, that's number one. I wouldn't take your weather, or I know we definitely have folks from Minnesota who definitely tune in, but it's I've been up. It's outside of west of Milwaukee, so he's still not quite incredibly, like, if you go back to your hometown, I'm not saying he's going to necessarily go there. Now, I've been up as far north. I haven't actually been to Green Bay. I would love to go there for a game. That would be tremendous, and definitely a possibility here in the near future. But I've been up in the Fox cities. I've drove up through all of that, up in Appleton and stuff like that. So, he's still a couple of hours away. Even if he were in his hometown or he had his family based in Milwaukee. I mean, Green Bay is a tiny little blip on the radar. As much as I hate to say that, it's definitely smallest market in the NFL. It still makes you wonder. I'm sure people who aren't familiar with the United States that, tune into the NFL overseas and stuff like that probably are like, where the heck is Green Bay? They might think it's a sprawling metropolis, like second to New York City or like Chicago or something like that, and it's definitely not the case. Nor is Pittsburgh, to be completely honest. Pittsburgh is considered to be a small market, but Pittsburgh's still like infinitely times bigger than Green Bay, Wisconsin. So
no, it definitely sounds like it's like some southern city where you've got a bunch of grass and stuff, and it's a much warmer climate, the complete opposite.
Yeah, but it's still not where he's originally from there, and then it's outside Madison, and I have a great story from Madison that I'm not going to share on this program. I just had to deal with almost hitting a deer at like 2 a.m. or whatever, driving through there, which was not fun. But that's the way it is. It's
and Big Ten blood too.
Yeah, that's always good. And everybody jokes about cheese with Wisconsin, but your exits are probably like 10-15 miles apart when you get into some of the rural area there, and every exit has like a cheese stand or two. That's what they got. They got the dairy farmers or whoever do that. It's funny. It seems stereotypical, but It is. It is what it is up there. It's why they're the cheeseheads. So, speaking of cheeseheads, Noah, thanks for joining me, man. I mean, we're out of things to talk about as far as stupid storylines and other speculation here from, Steelers Nation. I try not to get involved too much with some of the conversations in some of these internet groups, Facebook, Twitter, message boards, all these different things. People really exhaust me with some of this stuff. I think if you're taking the approach that I'm saying about J.J. Watt, I'm not going to be – I'll be excited or I won't be brokenhearted. It won't be – it's one or the other. It's not going to bother me either way. Ben comes back. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, this team, they're absolute trash. They don't know what they're doing. They should have fired – somebody even said – I saw actually this morning – it was something with Kevin Colbert and his comments again, and they're like, they could get rid of him too. And I'm just like – the Patrick Stewart face palm meme. Yeah, it's just get rid of everyone. That's the solution. There you go. And it's so heartless too. Of like, do you have people that go online and talk on Facebook about what you do for a living? I don't know. Are you like, if you're a garbage collector or something and you accidentally a McDonald's bag flew off the back of the truck, or you got people gunning for you in the comment sections against your company and saying, hey, get rid of this bum, he doesn't know what he's doing, leaves trash everywhere, he doesn't know how to do his job, you know what I mean? And I get that there's fits like that, but man, it's rough. I guess you're in the public eye like that, but I tend to be a little more, what do you want to say, sentimental towards knowing that these people are still human beings. So it's really rough. And, Kevin Colbert goes out there and again, I don't know if it was Ed Bouchette or Joe Rutter or one of these guys said, he goes out and here's a guy that says a bunch of things without really saying anything. And it's the art of doing that and not, showing your hand here during the NFL offseason. But thanks for joining me once again and talking all our nonsense. I'm sure we'll have more in the coming weeks. It will pile up. There'll be somebody else that gets cut from a different team or some other move that gets made or somebody's going to fart in the wind and then we're going to hear about it and everybody's going to pick it up and make clickbait articles about it. And Mark Madden will be, whatever he's going to complain about next, the next social media platform with whatever player, and we'll have plenty to talk about.
No, for sure.
For sure. So, folks, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're over there in YouTube land. And if you're elsewhere, like Apple Podcasts or otherwise, we appreciate your reviews of the show. Helps us get seen and heard by many more. And we appreciate you watching or listening from wherever you might be, even if it's somewhere in, I guess, Green Bay, Fox City, somewhere in Wisconsin. So, and dude, tell me if I'm wrong about my cheese stereotype. I do think I have it remembered correctly, but the old brain is starting to fritz out. That's why I get young guys like Noah in here to help keep me young and apprised. I know you don't throw around words like lit. You're not quite, like Chase Claypool or Zach Celedonia, but Zach, we did that. It was the exercise with me and Brian. Okay, now for the 5% of you that are still listening, we'll see if Zach gets the name drop, if he actually tunes in to the very end. He does tune in every now and then, so I do appreciate that from him as well. So, all right, folks, as I knock things off my desk off the side here by accident, I'm still drinking coffee. It's starting to, the caffeine's starting to kick in. I think that's time to put a bow on this episode. So my name's Joe. His name is Noah. Don't want to call you one of these Zachs. We got too many Zachs running around here. Until next time, as we always do, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.